Be bold. Be brave. Be extraordinary. Be vulnerable. Be real. Be curious. Be true. Be you. Welcome to Trusting Your Gut with world-class energy intuitive Katherine McIntosh, a show designed to awaken you to enjoy the process of evolving, have fun along the way, and learn to listen to those silent in-between moments. You are the expert of your own life, and nobody knows more about the next steps to take in your journey than you. So please, listen to your gut and discover what's waiting for you to explore. Here is your host, Katherine McIntosh.
All right, my magical friends, welcome to the show. I'm really excited about today's show. So, we are going to be talking about symptoms and the symptoms you're experiencing. And so the title of today's show is The Symptoms You're Experiencing Can Alleviate If You Do This. And I've been teaching all day and coming up with a lot of really cool stuff. And so sometimes when I teach all day, my brain gets a little fuzzy, but I'm going to do my best to offer this show today in a way that hopefully after the show, you can walk away with sort of a new perspective on what might be occurring in your life. And so when I'm referring to symptoms, that can be in any area of our lives. When it comes to our health, a symptom might appear as chronic headaches or chronic fatigue or an autoimmune disorder, right? A symptom could be chronic pain that you've been experiencing in your body. A symptom could also be anxiety or depression, right? That's health related. If we look at the financial aspect of your world, a symptom might be you're always feeling broke or never feeling good enough, or you don't have the confidence to take a risk and leave a job you hate, right? Those are all symptoms. And then your body reacts to the fact that you don't like your life at the moment, and then you start having health symptoms, right? Or you have health symptoms and your body reacts and you start having financial systems. So, or financial symptoms. And in the area of relationships, symptoms could be feeling stuck. Symptoms could be feelings of loneliness, feelings of not being understood. Maybe a symptom is you're constantly fighting with your current partner and feel like you guys just can't make it work. And so every area of our lives, we have symptoms, right? And sort of the biggest symptom that I would say is that somewhere in our lives, we feel like we are a victim or we are a prisoner of our own circumstances. And most of us try to alleviate those symptoms by researching or hiring or going to outside resources for the solution to the symptom. But here's what I know, that isn't a wrongness. It's awesome to gather information in order to change a symptom. But the symptom is not the thing that will like heal it, or trying to resolve the symptom is not the thing that will create the solution long term, right? I've seen this in people who get diagnosed with cancer, and or people who have chronic pain. I see this a lot in people who have chronic pain. So in cancer patients, I've seen where they will get diagnosed with the cancer, they do the radiation or they do the chemotherapy, the cancer leaves their body, and then a year later or 2 years later or 3 years later, the cancer comes back in the exact same spot. And here's what I know, if the cancer comes back, same with pain. If people who have chronic pain and they get little alleviations and then the pain comes back and then they get little alleviations and the pain comes back, the 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 thing that they try to heal is not what needs healing, right? There is always something usually underneath the surface. And I believe that one of the foundational pieces is that we make outside sources the answer to the solution, right? We abandon ourselves in the process. But true healing, this is just my personal opinion. Again, I'm not a doctor, right? My personal opinion from working with people all over the world and being able to change things people thought they couldn't change. I've found that when you find within you the internal freedom, so you go within to find the answer. When I've worked with people who've been diagnosed with cancer and the cancer never comes back, it's because they went inside to heal what needed to heal. And this is just my own personal opinion, as I believe that the source of almost everything we suffer from comes from a fundamental sort of hidden pattern that we keep recreating, which is we reject ourselves. We reject our brilliance. We reject our capacities. We reject our potency. We reject our beauty. We reject our gifts because we've spent most of our lives being entrained to fit in to this reality, to fit into a system or a religion or a workforce or a family dynamic or whatever your story is. Somewhere in your life, you've tried to fit in and be the best you can be in that environment. And when we try to fit in, we start abandoning critical elements of like our soul, right? Our soul starts to suffer. Our spirit starts to suffer when we start trying to fit in, to get it right. And so I believe there's nothing wrong with getting information of what's going on in your physical body in order to heal, but making the external resource your source of information. mm, yeah, your source of information, um, it it doesn't paint the whole picture of what's actually going on. And so I tell this story, a lot of you probably know, right? Nelson Mandela, who basically found a way to set himself free in an imprisoned environment. Most of us think that if we change our environment is imprisoning us. If we change our environment, then we will get a healing. So, back in college, when I was pretty messed up in the head and suffered pretty severely of basically body dysmorphia, but the suffering was a rejection, a complete rejection of me, of who I was as a person. And so I sort of went down this rabbit hole of thinking if I lost a lot of weight, if I got to my ideal weight, then I would be happy, right? If I got to whatever it is, then I would be happy. Then life would work. Then I would no longer feel imprisoned in my body. And in college, I think I moved about 13 times in the course of 4 years. And so I'd move to a place and I'd start to feel imprisoned, and I'd blame it on my environment. I'd blame it on my roommates. I'd blame it on the house. I'd blame it on the city I was living in. And then I'd leave, right? And I'd go somewhere else. And then I'd get somewhere else and I'd have that sort of environmental freedom, thinking that was my freedom. And it would last a week, maybe a month. And then I'd go back to my old habits and patterns of hating myself, of wanting to run away, and thinking that if I just changed locations, then that would solve all my problems, right? My environment was the problem. And then I'd go to another location. So I went to Chicago. I went to Milwaukee. I lived in Missoula, Montana. I went to Jamaica and Hawaii. And like I just kept like bouncing around to all these locations. And at the end of those 13 sort of moves, I had this light bulb moment of like, it's not about your environment, Katherine. It's not about where you're living. It's that inside of you is something that you haven't yet addressed, and you are chronically rejecting the magic and the beauty and the gift of you. And so I believe that the quickest way to alleviate most of the symptoms we're experiencing is to uncover all of the sort of sneaky ways in which we reject ourselves. So, the way that we reject ourselves can show up in a lot of different levels, right? I've had clients who said, "Well, I need to lose 5 pounds before I put myself on a dating site." Form of rejection. You're not accepting who you are in that moment, right? Or they say, "Oh, I did this. I need to go to grad school to get a degree in somatic psychology so I can do my healing work." Form of rejection. I didn't trust my healing work. I thought I needed a degree, right? After I left grad school, one of my PhD professors ended up hiring me to teach her, right? So every phase of life, another form of rejection could be you really like someone, but you're convinced they don't like you. You're rejecting you, right? Maybe you get nervous to ask someone out that you think is prettier than you, or sexier than you, or has more wealth status than you. Form of rejection. Anywhere where we dumb down our spirit or we talk ourselves out of an energy that expands our universe, we reject ourselves. And that rejection over time manifests as dis-ease. And that dis-ease could be financial dis-ease. That dis-ease could be relationship dis-ease. That disease could be health dis-ease or mental or emotional dis-ease. And so a Advil or aspirin or a medication that helps you with chronic headaches isn't going to heal what's causing the headache, right? I hope this is making sense. It's not going to help you heal the headache, right? Long term, it will not resolve the problem, right? Weight loss. And I say this a lot, and a lot of people don't believe me. It might take me another decade or 2 decades of talking about this for the message to become more mainstream and more acceptable. For those who have struggled emotionally with food and their relationship with food and their relationship with food and their body, food and restricting your food does not create weight loss. And I know a lot of you will probably reject this concept, but for people who mentally struggle with mental health when it comes to food in their bodies, restricting food is a quick fix solution that does not create long term, like absolving the problem. It's where you see those women, and I was one of them. I yo yo dieted and roller coastered my weight to the tune of, I think was it 2,500 pounds in 20 years? Some of you might not believe me, but it was a lot. Kind of an insanity, if you ask me, right? 20 years, 2,500 pounds. It's a lot. It was at least 100 pounds a year. Sometimes it was 150 pounds a year. Sometimes it was 120 pounds a year. Occasionally, if I was lucky, it'd be like 20, 30 pounds. but I was almost always fluctuating 8 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds, and it would destroy me, right? And so this idea that an external fix, a quick fix solution, a medication helps alleviate the symptom, but it doesn't heal the cause of the symptom. And the way to heal symptoms is to figure out what the root cause is. And I can't tell you how many times people come to me, right? I'm a energy intuitive for a living. I have a private practice in Aspen, but I also see clients all over the world. And they come to me for all kinds of reasons in all kinds of cases, not just health. People come to me when they're going through divorce. They come to me if they, are dealing with a lawsuit. They come to me if they're starting a new business. They come to me if their business isn't experiencing a lawsuit, like all these different things. And I'm able to go in energetically and kind of clear up the situation. And I'm always fascinated by the physical body and its ability to communicate. So when our physical body breaks down, all our bodies are trying to tell us is that we're in conflict with our spirit. We're in conflict with our desires. We're in conflict with our wishes. And we're creating an internal prison or an external prison. You choose, right? The way to set yourself free isn't to set yourself free by traveling the world, although that might create an amazing adventure. You might learn a ton. You might set yourself free in the adventure, but the adventure becomes an internal experience where you begin to open up. And so, in order to set ourselves free, we have to realize that we are the source. Now, the problem that we're facing, it might not be our fault, right? But if you are experiencing it, it's your responsibility to try to solve it. And so I'm going to give a few examples that I give in my book, Don't Diet, Be Happy, that hopefully will help you kind of uncover. So for example, if you are having heart issues, right? It could be like that you haven't given yourself permission to love yourself. You haven't given yourself permission to love your life, right? If you have knee problems, it might be because you've been making what you need wrong, or you haven't allowed yourself to move forward. Use the book, Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. And I use it as a frame of reference, but a lot of times there's different symptoms. So if you're experiencing thyroid symptoms, you have a hyper or hypothyroid, it can be a form of self esteem, meaning that you haven't trusted you to take a leap of faith in your life, or to take a leap of faith in you, or to make that move, or to leave that job, right? So, a lot of times when we struggle with our sort of perspective of ourselves and we're quick to reject ourselves and we have low self esteem, we can develop thyroid problems. If you have low self esteem, you can develop autoimmune issues. If you have low self esteem, you probably have developed some form of um, what is it? I was going to say eating disorder, but you have a false sense of what you look like. And most people, when they look at themselves, now sometimes people look at themselves and go, wow, I have a really warped sense of what I look like. I think I'm way lighter and smaller and cuter than I actually am when I see pictures of myself, right? But they look in the mirror and they're fine. Most people, however, struggle, and when they see themselves in the mirror, what they see is a much larger version of themselves, right? And people who suffer from that, they tend to have had traumatic childhoods. They tend to have had an absentee parent, right? And so underneath the core of sort of a dysfunctional relationship with your body, you see your body is different than it actually is. It usually is a form that you started rejecting you, rejecting your gifts, rejecting your brilliance at a really young age. People who also struggle with body image and body dysmorphia and all of those things usually also are really gifted intuitives. So they're quite psychic and they might be really good healers, but they haven't allowed themselves access to that gift. Now, when I say really good healers, I don't mean that you have to do it as a living, but a lot of people like to kind of cut their awareness off because they're afraid they're going to be busy all the time. I was teaching a class today called the Intuitive Energy Course, and it's a course I've created and developed and continue to create and develop. And people who join get lifetime access to the course, which is pretty amazing because I believe in sort of supporting the journey. Get lifetime access, but you get to also take the class every time I teach it in the future for free. Right, you pay once and you get a certificate. I paid $100,000 in grad school. I've probably spent over $1 million on my own education in this field, studying, reading, obsessing, well, for the last really 30 years. And people who struggle with their body image and body weight tend to shut down their awareness. And so I was teaching this class and I said to everyone, when you guys sign up for my class, your energy pings me at random times. And I used to get overwhelmed by it because I thought I had to do something with that information. But now when that happens, if I need to, I say hi energetically. If I need to, I like just give a blast of energy their way. But in recent, I'm really in allowance where everyone is, and I'm working on being an allowance of where everyone is on their journey, right? So when it's time to take the leap, it's the right time. If it's not yet time to take the leap, it's not that it's not the right time, it's that you haven't made it the right time. So you might feel stuck, you might feel scared, you might feel nervous, right? All these things. And so, when we're constantly searching for a solution to something, but we're giving all of our power over to a doctor, an outside source, even a healer, right? You give all your power over to this energy, right? Not your best choice. That I believe that the job of a quote unquote healer, whatever you want to call it, intuitive, a coach, a consultant, is to hold space for you to step into your brilliance, to become the greatness of you in every area of your life. And, I say to people all the time, I said, my target is to get you to fire me. My target is to get you to fire me. Why? Because I want people to trust themselves, to know that inside of them, right? Like Nelson Mandela, inside of them is the ability, right, to create a freedom within, an internal freedom that no one can take away from you. And so when you begin to trust that you have the information, right, that you have the capacity to resource things. I said today in the class, I said, hold on, I want to see if I can pull up the quote. I said today, oh man, it was a good one. I just got distracted because I was like, that's not the quote. Yeah, so we basically imprison ourselves with our thoughts. We imprison ourselves with our ideas. And so inside of you is this ability to truly set yourselves free. And so here is a different quote that I said today, which is, your symptoms are brutal if you're not living your truth. If you're disconnected from your soul, if you're disconnected from your spirit, if you're disconnected from your body, if you're disconnected from your mind. And I know sometimes we can get so in our mind that it actually is a total distraction. But there's this idea, right, that the head and the body, they can be one. They can be a resource for you, but your symptoms will be brutal, right, if you're not living your truth. And so your truth, it isn't about fitting in. Your truth isn't about needing to be right. Your truth isn't needing to be mean to anyone or to even be in defense. Your truth is knowing what you're made of and literally following what expands and fulfills you, right? Life is meant, like, we're meant for fulfillment, right? We're meant for progress. We're meant for evolution. We're meant for experiences and adventures. We're not meant to get to a stagnant place in our lives. And yet, most of us are running around trying to get to the result instead of enjoy the process along the way. And so, usually, if you are experiencing some form of symptom, whether it's health, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, whether it's financial, whether it's in relationships, maybe it's even in your parenting, and you're experiencing some form of a symptom, disconnect with your kids. And by the way, it's healthy to go through a form of separation with you and your kids as they begin to sort of establish their own sense of identity. They will go through a period of, usually, right, of rejecting you. That isn't wrong. It's a sort of claim for the child or the teenager to insert their independence. It's healthy, right? It's healthy. And yet, you as a being, on some level, might get triggered by your teenager because you've stopped inserting or asserting your own independence. You've become dependent on fitting in with your friend group, or you've become dependent on fitting in with your work group, or you've become dependent on fitting in to your religious affiliation, right? And if you're feeling like there's a lot of symptoms occurring in your life, anxiety, depression, lethargy, feeling inadequate, feelings of loss, feelings of, you know, inadequacy, weight gain, pain in your body, if you are experiencing those, chances are you've become dependent and it's time to assert your independence on some level to claim who you are again. A teenager rebels because they're trying to claim their sense of self, their sense of identity. Who am I? And rebelling is a part of sort of the life. It's a life, it's a rite of passage to claim your independence. And so some of us as adults have stopped claiming our independence and we've become dependent, right, on fitting in, dependent on, not ruffling the feathers, dependent on the status quo or the, what's the word? Having people like witness where you're functioning from and sort of staying within the lines. Sometimes it can be really freeing to open your world up to inserting and asserting your independence and figuring out who the heck you are. Because chances are, if you're experiencing symptoms for a long time and outside resources are not helping them fully heal, it's because it's time to insert and assert your independence in a new way, to rebel against the norms that you've spent so hard and so long trying to fit yourself into, and maybe be slightly rebellious and discover who you are. So that is the beginning. We will come back after we take a short break. Thanks for listening.
OMTimes TV.
Do you trust you? Do you trust your body? What if the key to unlocking the weight, pain, suffering, fear, anxiety, addictions, traumas, and sorrows was already inside of you? Learn to love the skin you are in so you can create the body, business, and life you love. Everyone always says you can't explain what Katherine does, you just have to experience it. From Hollywood actors to New York Times best-selling authors to some of the world's wealthiest and most successful, no two experiences are the same. For private sessions, online courses, live events, and the latest book Jack Canfield calls Game Changer and should be required reading for everyone, go to katherinemcintosh.com. KATHERENEMCINTOSH.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
All right. I remembered the quote, or at least a version of it. So, welcome back. We have been talking about alleviating symptoms, right? And now we're going to dive into how, right? Okay, great philosophical information, Katherine, but how? And, unfortunately, the how isn't a one size fits all or cookie cutter, but the overall arching availability to all of you, right? To all of us, right? Because this applies to me as well. There are plenty of areas of my life. In fact, I saw one yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh, I created a little bit of a prison for myself in this area of my life, right? And, as it's unraveling, I went, wow, right? I had created by being a victim or being at the effect, but I didn't even know that I was doing it. And I've really been watching my language to myself and to others lately. What am I saying that when I say it, I realize I'm saying it from a belief that I'm slightly trapped. And, we put ourselves in these situations. And so, how do we get out of them? I would say the first one is to sort of maybe do a little inventory on the areas of your life where you can recognize you're rejecting you. So if you struggle with your weight, you're rejecting you, right? On some level. If you struggle with your finances, you're rejecting you on some level. If you struggle with your self esteem, you're rejecting you on some level. So you want to identify the areas of your life where you're rejecting you. And you want to also see if then there's patterns within those areas that have a similar theme to them. Right. And this isn't like, oh my gosh, I have to solve this puzzle. You're basically gathering information so that you can be informed. If you want to pass a test, if you want to excel at anything, you have to study the information. And so this might sound crazy, but one of the keys to my freedom in the last, 9 months to a year has been to gather the information from no judgment, to gather the information from curiosity. Wow, where are the areas of my life I'm rejecting me? Ooh, didn't even realize that one was there. Right? And look, all of us have some form of rejection because if you're not living the life you truly want to be living in all areas of your life, you're doing rejection in some form. And look, don't be in a rush to get past all the rejections because when you stop rejecting you, when you have absolutely everything you want, when you get to like the end and there's nothing left, like your life is probably done. And I don't mean that in a morbid way, but the journey of life is to go through the evolutionary process and enjoy every moment. Sometimes we're in such a rush to get somewhere, right? I knew I used to be in a rush all the time. Rush to have a house, rush to get married, rush to write and publish a book, rush to build, a successful business, rush to get married, to get like all these things, right? And every time I rushed the process, I got to the end result and I was unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and slightly depressed. So, freedom comes from this willingness to no longer rush the process. And I don't mean be lazy. I mean, don't force it if the energy isn't there. I forced certain things in certain areas of my life, and it created a whole lot of chaos, but it led me here. It led me to coach and teach and travel around the world and facilitate people in online courses from all over the world. So, don't be in a rush because every life experience sets you up for becoming the best version of yourself, who you can be today. And then tomorrow, you're going to become another best version of yourself. So, for those of you that are really struggling and you're struggling with anxiety and you're struggling with depression, you're struggling with weight gain, you're struggling with pain in your body, or you have an autoimmune deficiency or dis-ease that you haven't been able to resolve, my invitation first, and this might sound like a terrible advice. So, again, I'm not a doctor, right? Consult your physician. But I personally would would remove the label that's been put on you of what's wrong, right? I tell the story of when I was in business. Right? Actually, I'll tell the health story. So, when I was selling real estate, I became quite successful in the real estate part of my life. I had great friends, but I was in a terrible marriage. I knew walking down the aisle not to marry him. But I did. I was cute, not bright. I had very low self-esteem. I didn't believe I was pretty, and it was the first time I was, like, in love for longer than 6 weeks. And I went, "Well, if he loves me and he's asking me to marry him, then I should say yes, right? I really do love him, and I wanna love him, but something in me knew, mm, maybe not, right? He didn't speak any English. I was living in South America. Luckily that choice led me to hang out with shamans and like spend time in the jungles and travel the land and learn a lot about indigenous cultures and like just a lot of really cool things that I picked up along my journey. And but I knew walking down the aisle. So when I was married, I was successful in real estate. I was working all the time because my home life was extremely tumultuous. And I used to say to people, you never know what happens behind closed doors, right? This man, after I married him, our honeymoon, he was unfaithful on our honeymoon. Um, as luck would have it, as fate would have it, the boat that we were on when we parked it at shore one day to go explore one of the islands in the Galapagos Islands, the boat drifted into rocks and the boat started to sink. It didn't sink all the way, but we lost clothes, we lost belongings. It was like I was sitting on the beach with my elbows on my knees, watching the captain try and, basically drive a sunken ship to shore so that it didn't sink. And and I just remember sitting on the beach going, well, isn't that a metaphor for my life? I didn't listen to my intuition. And so I went on to stay married to this person, which I shouldn't have done, right? And 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 I was living in a very unstable home, and I used to say, "You never know what happens behind closed doors," because he was extremely abusive, both physically and verbally, and everything in my body knew to leave, but I was trying to maintain a status quo that I should stay. And 9 months, I started to get really sick. I'd lost a ton of weight. I was in excruciating pain. I wasn't able to sleep very well. I was trying to medicate with alcohol, which probably wasn't very smart, but it was the way that I survived at the time. And, I could take it or leave it, but I was definitely choosing to take it more often than leave it at the time. And I remember just feeling like I was dying, and doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, so they gave me, a test and then a diagnosis and then an antibiotic or medicine to help with what they had diagnosed it with, but it wasn't that diagnosis. And then I'd go to another doctor or the same doctor, and they'd give me a different diagnosis with different medication and different prescriptions. And then I'd try that for a while and that didn't work, so then we'd try again. And this kind of went on for 9 months, and it felt like an eternity, to the point where I was pretty emaciated. I wasn't purposely not eating. I literally couldn't eat. It was making me sick. And every time I would eat, I would either have excruciating pains or I'd have to lay in bed for hours at a time, or I was throwing up. And no one could figure out what was wrong with me. So I went to this healer, and the healer put her hands on my physical body, and I was fully clothed. She put one hand on my sacrum and one hand on my belly, and she said, "What does your gut know? What does your body know?" And she started just for an hour to ask me questions. And it was the first time in all of this, right, that I went, "Oh my God." Right? Oh my God, the doctors were guessing just as much as I was, but I was giving them all the power, was putting in their hands all the power that they knew that something was like they knew more than I knew. And the truth is, you know more than anybody else. We sometimes just get lost and we want someone else to help us. But the first sort of step in this is to get really curious on what's going on in my life. Where am I suffering? Where is my soul suffering? Where is my spirit suffering? So I was forcing myself to stay in, what felt like a prison of a marriage, to pretend that I was happily married. But like even when I decided to take a leap of faith and leave. It was quite sudden, and everyone in my family was shocked. "Wait, but you guys love each other. You're the perfect couple. You're the power couple. Look how successful you are in real estate. Look at the homes you own. Look at the investment properties you own. Look at what you're creating. How could you get divorced?" And then I started to tell the stories. I felt safe to start to tell the stories of what had actually happened behind closed doors that I didn't tell anybody about. And when I went to this healer, it gave me permission to unleash all this stuff that I had been hiding, all the shame, all the insecurity, all just the walking on eggshells, and and also carrying the weight of the entire marriage, both financially and emotionally and mentally. And he was off gallivanting, being unfaithful, drinking way too much, and it was scary. And there were a few points where I was scared for my life. So the point being is I went to all these doctors with all these diagnoses, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. And so a lot of times doctors, the medical community, Western, amazing. I love doctors when I need them. I had an amazing surgeon heal my wrist when I had to go to surgery. I broke my wrist in a whole bunch of different places, plate and screws. And thank God for Western medicine, right? But more often than not, when people come to me with something they've been diagnosed with, it becomes a challenge for them to figure out how to resolve it, because what they're doing is they're treating the diagnosis instead of what caused the symptom in the first place, instead of what caused the disease. And so when I work with people, I remove the label of what they have, and I get really curious around what's the root cause. Is it insecurity? Is it not living your truth? Is it, hiding a secret, or being ashamed, or feeling embarrassed about maybe a childhood trauma? Maybe you're embarrassed about an adulthood trauma or a mistake you made. And so often when we get really curious, that's when life begins to change the symptoms we are experiencing. And so, my friends, there's no one solution fits all. I do love Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. But if you're struggling in your financial world, if you're struggling in your business world, if you're struggling with confidence, I would really encourage you to look at, wow, where are the areas that I keep rejecting myself? And what I mean by that is most of us cut off a part of ourselves in order to fit in order to be loved, in order to be accepted. Right. And I think that can be a big mistake. And then we spend our lives blaming the other person. Like, my first husband is not to blame. I'm responsible for my choice. I could have left at any time, and I kept choosing to stay, and I kept choosing to stay, and I kept choosing to stay. Why did I stay? Because I was insecure, and I was rejecting my brilliance. I was rejecting that I was good enough. I was rejecting my value. So I truly believe that 90+% of illnesses and diseases and diagnoses and things we have can be resolved when we stop rejecting ourselves, when we stop trying to cut off ourselves to fit into someone else's world or relationship or life. It can be really empowering. And look, it's not a destination you arrive at and then you're done and you're done. This is a lifelong journey of evolving your spirit and learning and growing with it. And as you go in different phases of your life, you have different wishes, you have different needs, right? And the couples that stay together the longest are the ones that allow each other to grow as they, grow, and then they continue to reconnect as a couple, right? And so each person in any relationship is their own spirit, their own soul, their own unique identity. And over time, we tend to close that down in order to not leave the relationship. But what we don't realize is that if we make room for both to grow independently, and we give each other the freedom, the possibilities that are available are quite extraordinary. And we learn most in relationships. So whether that is in friendships or intimate relationships, we learn and grow the most. And being a business owner, I learn and grow a lot from running a business, and I also learn and grow a lot from being a mom to an incredible child who I get to watch go through his phases of life. And so you are not your symptom, right? You are not the problem you think you have. Underneath the problem is an extraordinary gift inside of you that will blossom and grow if you allow it. And so I said today, I said, the hardest thing about change is letting it be easy, right? Change is actually really, really easy, but we make it hard because we've decided it can be scary, it can be tumultuous, right? If it took 20 years to build this problem, it's going to take 20 years to break it down. It's like, no, actually, it takes one thought of being willing to let it go, one thought of demanding to release, right? One thought of going, wow, I no longer want to reject me anymore. I want to find peace. I want to find happiness. I want to bring back all the pieces of me that I left behind by trying to fit in, right? And so, in that 1 hour with that healer, all the diagnoses that the doctors labeled that I had, none of them were true. The truth, right, was, right, I was not living my truth, so my symptoms were brutal. They were unexplainable. They were undetectable. They were just guessing at what was wrong based on my symptoms, right? And so the symptoms were brutal because I wasn't living my truth. And so if you are in a life phase where things are happening to you that don't feel so great, it's probably because there's part of you that isn't living your truth. Hmm. So I'm going to say this to you. If you have a desire to change your life, right? If you have a desire to be bigger than what you're choosing or living, if you have a desire to move across the country, if you have a desire to start a business, if you have a desire to get into a loving relationship, if you have a desire, right? The capacity to make that desire come true is already within you. All the capacities that you need to make that desire come true is already within you, right? If you didn't have the desire, you wouldn't have the capacity. But most people get the desire and they're like, oh, I can't do it. And it's like, no, actually, that desire came through you because you have the ability to make that come true. And so, for every one of you, what I'd like to invite you to look at is, where are you not living your truth? Your truth that inside of you is an ability to create freedom. Now, Nelson Mandela sat in a cell wrongly accused for, I think it was almost or over 2 decades. And he created a level of freedom here, and then he changed the world, right? Your external circumstances are not your keys to freedom. Your internal circumstances are your keys to freedom. And so, meditation has helped a lot. Doing somatic exercises has unlocked the trauma in my body and allowed my body to reset itself, right? And so there is no one size fits all, but whatever you can do, find a way to set you free from all the ways you reject you, from all the places you make yourself wrong. You're not wrong. You never were. You're a brilliant, beautiful, bright, shining star. I was listening to David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me Now, probably for the fifth or sixth time. And he says to people, everyone has inside of them this capacity, and we're only living a very small percentage. We could at least be increasing by 40%, 60%, unlocking that potential. So, my invitation to each of you as you listen to today's episode is unlock your potential. Make it easy. It doesn't have to be hard. And for those of you that listened and really resonated with today's message, please share it. If you want to write a comment, if you know someone who this episode could impact, it's about spreading the word so we all can evolve. I adore you all, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.
Katherine is not a medical practitioner nor a licensed therapist. She has strong opinions and will express them, and truly believes that you are your best advocate for any and every area of your life. If you need medical advice, please consult your physician.